everybody. We've just had a traumatic experience.
As you can see.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
It involved a fireplace.
We have Canada geese that like to nest and hang out in this area here. One couple in particular just has to be on our roof. They just can't be anywhere but our roof. They set up nests, laid 5 eggs. We're up there for a month and a half, and they had some babies. And
we hear them running, squealing, the birds chirping up there. The Canada geese, gush, gush, gush. It's like they're moving furniture. You know, it's normal to us.
Yeah, so every morning at 6 o'clock, we'd hear the male fly in, rah, rah, and he'd land on the roof. So they were like family to us. So one morning,
Day before yesterday, I woke up at 7 in the morning and I heard such ruckus coming from the fireplace, which their nest is straight above, and I recorded it so I could play it for Marcus.
You can hear everything coming through the fireplace. It's like a big tube that you can, like a big listening tube. You can hear everything walking around up there.
But then we saw the parents freaking out.
We noticed the parents were down by the swimming pool. They were swimming in the pool and they were squawking and they were looking around and squawking. And I said, it looks like they're looking for something. And then they hopped the fence and they were just walking around in the grass. And I said, why aren't they up on the nest where they're supposed to be? The chirping sounds for the babies were so loud, it was echoing through the whole house, and you can hear them scratching around. And after a while, I said, wait a minute, the parents are looking and I'm hearing this loud sound, and I thought, oh my God, did one of them fall in the chimney? So I went up on the roof, and the chimney is covered. It has a grill around it, so there's no way they can get in there. But then I looked closer. Underneath of the grill is this little slit for air to go in and out. And I put my ear to it, and I could hear some scratching around down there. And I said, oh my God, one of them got in there. So I ripped off the top, and I called my handyman friend, James, and he came over with all the tools that he could bring, and his son, because it was his day off. And thanks, James, for coming. I appreciate it. So we went up on the roof, and we looked down, and we measured. It was about 25 feet all the way down. Now, if this was a normal fireplace, we could just open up the flue down here, and it would just drop out, and we'd be fine. But this isn't a normal fireplace. This is a gas fireplace. We never even use this thing. It has this thing in the fireplace, which is this metal cage which is bolted to the floor. And then it had another set of ribs above it. And then it had metal, steel plates above that.
Rendering it impossible to rescue this gosling.
And so we went to the top, and so the main tube had another tube around it. It was actually a tube inside of a tube. So I looked down the middle hole. There's no bird. And sure enough, the bird was stuck between the two tubes, which is only like literally 1.5 inches wide. And it was 25 feet all the way down, and there was no way to get to it. And James and I both said, we got to rip the fireplace apart. There's no other way to get to it. So we got here, and we got everything we could get. This thing was attached to gas and electric lines, which had to be shut off and disconnected. She actually tried calling the fire department, but we didn't know this, but the fire department was actually closed on weekends. I've never heard of a fire department being closed.
Another place I called said, just let the bird die and gas up, gas up the fireplace to get rid of the body.
That's insane. That's just insane. It's insanity.
No help whatsoever.
So when the mother was out there crying out in the grass, you could hear this thing instantly respond. And it was just heart-wrenching. So he got out the demolition sawzall, and he started cutting into this thing. And we got this thing out. We just ripped it out, cut off the gas lines. And then this had another cage around it. This thing with giant 2-inch steel pipes, which sealed off the top. So we had to cut through that. We had to cut through steel tubing after steel tubing after steel tubing. And we ripped it out.
Meanwhile, the gosling is listening to all these loud noises and drills.
A sawzall goes, blah, 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 blah. It's like really loud. It's like a jackhammer. And it's kicking up all this black dust and soot and fiberglass, because there's insulation between each layer. And it was kicking all this up, and it's vibrating the hell out of this whole system, and the poor bird is in there vibrating around and kicking up all this dust and is breathing all his fumes. So I'm being traumatized knowing what's happening because the poor little bird is even going to survive this. So we're ripping out metal after, and this thing is not a cheap fireplace like they make nowadays out of aluminum and tin and brass. This is solid steel. The guy that built this house, he was a tank driver in World War II. And this house, every workman that's ever worked on this house said this place is built like a tank. Just trying to drill through the wall, drill bits would go dull. So we're cutting through here, and this is solid steel plates. And after this got taken out and those pipes got cut, there was a steel roof that we had to cut through. We cut through that.
Multiple layers.
And then there was another layer of metal, and then there was another layer of metal. So it was 4 different layers of steel that we had to cut through. And this steel is so tough
and thick
that we couldn't bend it with our hands. He had a 6-foot crowbar that we used for demolition, and we were, both of us together, ramming on that thing, and that's all we could do. This is all we could do to that metal. And meanwhile, we're hearing this poor little chick crying and kicking and screaming. And then finally we get to the tube. It's the main tube with the outer tube around it, and then there was a third tube between those two, and you could see the little legs of the chick. These little foot?
No. Oh my God.
He's got one on each side of that thing.
Oh no, dear Lord. Oh God. Oh my God. I can't take it.
There was no way to get it to pull it out underneath. We had, and that middle strip was held in with other metal, which we couldn't get to. It was a nightmare, and we were snipping at it with snippers and cutting. We were doing everything we could possibly do, and we were trying not to damage or injure the bird.
Meanwhile, there was 2 more little goslings on the roof, and they couldn't sleep there alone or else they would have froze. Their parents had abandoned them for the day. Then James had to go to retrieve an even more heavy-duty drill saw, and then I had you stop what you were doing because you were trying manually to still work on the bird, and I said, stop, go get me those 2, because it was getting dark.
Yeah.
So he brought the 2 downstairs.
So I'm working we busted like 4 different demolition blades, and he had to go get more. And meanwhile, I'm cutting. It's like trying to desperately claw your way out of prison with like a spoon. I had heavy duty metal clippers, and I was snipping like a 1/4 inch at a time, and the bird is crying.
You look like a prisoner breaking out of prison.
Look at this metal. Look at this. This is like 3/8 inch thick steel. Like, who has this in a fireplace? This is insane. This is literally like parts of a tank.
Yeah.
It's just insane how this thing is built. And anyway, so make a long story short, after
6 hours.
6 in the morning, we didn't realize it was caught in there until noon. So it's now 6 o'clock at night. So 9 hours later, we're working like crazy, sweating like crazy. And it's literally like being in a war, like in a battle.
You were getting aerosolized with what? Soot? Insulation? Dust?
We were covered black. James and I were both coughing up black. And of course, breathing in fiberglass and everything. It's literally like being in a battle where, like in Pearl Harbor, where the battleship got bombed and it turns over upside down and it's sinking, and the guys are on the outside of the ship with welding torches trying to cut the guys out that are trapped inside. It's exactly like that. We were sweating, we were bleeding, we were
racing against the clock.
We hadn't eaten since yesterday, and we didn't even drink water. It was just like we were dripping sweat, and the bird is crying.
I would have vlogged it, but it was all hands on deck.
After 9 hours, we finally get the little guy out, and James's son looks into the fireplace and goes, "There's a second one."
Oh, God.
And this one was weaker and barely making any sounds, and it's caught, and you can still hear it scratching barely. So
at this point, he gave me the injured one, put it in the box that was waiting for them with a heating pad, took it downstairs, washed it. It was filthy. But it was still so hyper. It wanted its mom. It didn't know what it was doing. It slept for 5 minutes, and then it woke up again. I want my mommy, I want my mommy. So I took it outside in the golf course in the box, hoping I could see the mother. It's chirping, no mom's in sight. So I took it back, and before I entered the house, poor little thing, it was like, before it conked out, it said, "I'm gonna give it everything I have to call out for my mother." And it was chirping so loud for a good 5 minutes. And then I took it inside and it just went to sleep for a little bit. It just collapsed. And then go get the other 2 healthy ones that were on the roof, but alone and scared. Put them all 3 together and I was awaiting the 4th one.
So meanwhile, I'm up here. James had to run again to get more tools, and I'm hearing this thing, and it's getting weaker and weaker. The chirps are barely heardable, and I'm saying, hang in there, come on, hang in there, almost there. And it backs its way around the back of the tube, and I can't even see it or get to it. So it was just this, what happened over the next hour was probably one of the most tense, stressful moments of my life. Trying to rescue this thing that I can't even see, but I know it's there and it's wedged in there. And I don't know if it's alive. I hear it dying. It's like slowly fading away. It would like use its last bit of energy, go, okay, I'm trying. Ugh. The reason it couldn't get through is the head was poking through, but the wing was caught on a piece of metal that was in the way. It wasn't wide enough. So I had to get some shears in there and try to cut the metal. And I was using every energy I had to try to cut the metal. And finally I get the metal, but I don't want to slice the bird with the open cut. So I had to like get pliers and bend the metal if I could, but it's hard to get to. And anyway, I got the bird out, and it was just so covered in black, and it was drained, and it was just almost lifeless. So I give it to her.
I put it in the box. I didn't want to traumatize it too much. Did what I could. Put it in the box. You can't feed birds. I have a PhD in Canadian geese now, and while they were during the rescue, I read that you cannot, feed them or give them food when they're in such a food or water when they're in this stressed state. So just put them all to bed. They all 4 conked out. I slept with them right next to them the next morning, and I'm thinking, well, I'm going to be the proud mother of 4 Canadian little goslings now.
She was reading the internet all day while we were trying to do this, learning all about geese.
Ordering things for them, a portable gate for the front lawns.
Ordering food and gates and cages. She made this beautiful little warm, cozy thing for them to lie in with a heating pad. She covered it up, and we were tiptoeing through the house. And
all night.
There was 4 birds lying in their little cozy blanketed box, and they all fell asleep, and we put the top on it, and we were tiptoeing around the house all day, and it was like this magical feeling that in this box is
4 miracles.
4 little miracles were just sleeping. They were so quiet, like they were literally. There was not one sound.
They were just exhausted.
And it was like, I don't know. There was this magical feeling of having these little sleeping guests, in the house. I can't even describe the feeling, but it was just this magical feeling, and we were. We fully expected that we were going to be, but we didn't know that a Canada goose, when it has babies, the second day, it takes it out into nature and shows it how to forage for itself. It teaches it how to fly and swim.
It takes it to water.
We can't do that. We don't know how to teach it to fly and how to forage for its own food and stuff. And so we were kind of freaking out, like, okay, these are going to be like, these things are literally like, their wingspan is as wide as the human arms, and they weigh like 40 pounds.
I'm thinking, well, are you kidding? Our life will never be the same as we know it with these little geese in our lives now. But while I was falling asleep, I thought, wait a minute. These geese do not leave. They don't abandon their babies. I am going to drive around every day looking for their parents.
Oh, by the way, this all ended at midnight.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I had to start my day
at midnight.
All my stuff I had to do that day. I had to start after this was all ended. So I started my work day at midnight, and I was up till like 5 a.m. the next day. I was beat. So
I took second shift with them.
I slept until noon the next day. She was sleeping right next to the chicks.
The next morning, I woke up at the crack of dawn, had food and water on the ready for them. And I went to the box, and the last one didn't make it. Poor little angel. But the first one was still going, and then the 2 healthy ones were there. So I fed the 2 healthy ones. The injured one still didn't want to eat. Right after I finished feeding them, I was going to throw them in the car in the laundry basket, and I hear wah, wah, out in the grass, and I go look, and there's 4 Canadian geese. And what a beautiful thing, because the 2 geese that live on the roof are always alone. There's just them 2. But this was a serious, this was a disaster. This was a crisis last night. And they apparently got 2 of their friends and brought them over to look for the geese at the crack of dawn. So I ran the laundry basket out in the back, jumped the fence, pulled the basket over, and started walking slowly towards the geese, and they turned around and started walking away until they heard chirp, chirp, chirp. And then I think one of they started to get hostile a little bit towards me, thinking, oh my God, that's my baby, you have my baby. So I put the laundry basket down really quick, and I pulled one of the healthy ones out. And what I saw just melted my heart. I will never forget this as long as I live. The love between a parent and its child, the reunion, it was the most beautiful thing. The mother, out of all 4, I could tell this was the mother. She started and running towards that baby, and the baby towards her. And I had to turn my back to get the others out really quick, but I wouldn't be surprised if they hugged. And I pulled the other 2 out really quick and picked up the laundry basket and ran home, jumped the fence, and grabbed my phone so I could record this for Marcus, because all that hard work he did, and he can't even see the reunion, the happy ending. So the happy ending, it was just amazing. So they're, as you can see, they're walking towards water in the direction of the pond, and they have the 3 babies, protected in a barrier. They got the 1 in the front, 1 in the back, and 2 on the sides. And the 2 healthy ones, they're like steamrollers, but the little one had so much problems. He even his height, I call him the little one, the injured one, the unlucky one. He was the same size as the 2 others, but he just looked so emaciated.
He could barely move, but all the big ones, they stayed and walked really slow.
Yeah, they walked ahead, and as you can see in some of this footage, one of them, when the injured one stops, the little brother turns around and says, what's wrong? Oh, hey, come on. And he runs to his little brother. Come on, little Bucky. And then the little brother, he continues on. And I mean, it was the most beautiful, most heart-wrenching thing I've ever seen. I will never, ever look at Canadian geese the same way. Every time they fly over or we hear them, aren't we just gonna be like, oh my God, they just came into our lives like gangbusters, took it over, turned it upside down, spent the night and left, and they took our hearts with them.
They were just in our life for one day, and after all of this, I go walking by the kitchen and I see that box with the towels in it, and it's empty.
And we see a little feather on the floor.
And I was so overwhelmed with emotion. How could they touch us so much in one day, and then they're gone?
They've left such an impact, like such an imprint on our hearts.
And I feel like a fireman that went in a burning building to rescue 2, but only 1 survives. And I feel like a failure. I feel like I didn't, because I'm a perfectionist. I want to do everything perfectly, and it just,
One is better than none, and what you did is just the biggest undertaking. Nobody would have done this.
When you see something in your hands dying, looking at you with its little eyes, I'm sure there's some manly men out there that are going to be laughing at this and going, you guys are such a bunch of wimps. Like, we eat these things, and it was like, yeah. That's like a whole nother world to us. Like, we can't, how can, I don't want to go there.
I never really could have imagined. I just didn't really think about it that much till I was there. Seeing the mother, hearing the mother squeaking for the baby, calling the baby, and it's in here. And then just hours later, now we're out there calling for the mother and she can't hear. I've never, the bond between a mother and child is so strong. And for anybody to ever come between that, humanity
is taking away the environment that animals naturally live in, and they're trying their best to coexist with us, and they're trying to live and eat and do whatever they do in the man-made crazy world that we have. They don't complain. They just make the best of it. Animals have no choice. Animals are forced to live in our world, and they're forced to, like domestic animals, they're caged and they're forced to eat the crap, the processed
Stuff that ruins their kidneys.
The wild animals, like, they have very few places left to really have a natural life, and it's just, I don't know. There's so much we can learn from the bits of nature that are left, and how magical and endearing and educational it is. They have a lot to teach us.
I have to say, another thing to take away from this is, you think that something's impossible. I took one look at this scenario that Marcus and James were facing, and I said, that's impossible. I don't know how they're going to do it. But with will, tenacity, hope, and strength, elbow grease, they accomplished the impossible. I just can't believe what you guys accomplished. So when you're looking at some big task or something and you think, how am I ever going to accomplish that? They accomplished this. I think anything can be accomplished. This was an undertaking. You still alive, baby?
Barely.
Barely hanging.
No, I think a piece of me died with that one bird. It was.
Me, I'm heartbroken for the bird, but I'm the overjoyed, feeling I have for the three that made it really eases that burden on me.
This is like in one of those nature movies. One dies, one lives. It's just nature. It's the way it is.
Anyway, we just wanted to share this beautiful story with you. It had a bittersweet ending, but just watching this family that were separated overnight, it's just so funny. These little babies spent the night at our house unexpectedly without their mother knowing, and then just to see them reunited and going back off, and oh my gosh, I can't wait to go take a bike ride and see if we can find them. And I know he survived, the little one.
Well, the adventure of life continues. It's a movie. You cry, you laugh, drama, adventure. Anyway, guys,
we just wanted to share that beautiful story. Every time I hear the call of Canada geese now, I'm reminded of that little miracle that left such a huge impact on our lives in such an emotional way. We wish you well, little guy.